Construya. Su video rocola.
Making of a 4-layer voice coil. Because the voice coils sold in Speaker's dedicated store are not the original from factory, we have to build them. We show you now a step-by-step simple way to copy and build a 4-layer voice coil that has been impossible to find in the market. Materials: insulated copper wire 31 AWG gauge, toluene or epoxy solvent, yellow contact adhesive, slow drying epoxy resin, scissors, masking tape, a lighter, a thin wooden stick, X-rays plastic film, a clean seal cloth, a piece of fine grit sandpaper, a piece of aluminum foil 1145, and craft paper. It is also necessary a tip spear scalpel, a heat gun, and a soldering iron with the respective welding. It is required to have a mold or formwork that has the same diameter of the voice coil. This is very important. And a winding machine. If it's not possible to get it, we can tailor a hand drill. Procedure: the first thing to do is carefully read the article link which is beneath this video. In this tutorial, you will find a whole theory and a series of recommendations necessary to achieve this project successfully. It is also important that you have built a simple coil first to develop the skills required for this type of work. Place the mold in the drill mandrel and make sure it's well tight. Place the aluminum strip around the mold and we mark the point which will cut the amount of aluminum required. We cut the aluminum strip using this scalpel. We measure the aluminum strip. It should be 1 mm of space between the beginning and the end. The aluminum strip, it must be bent with the help of a pencil. The silver side should face inward. We measure the width of the original coil winding, whether this is damaged or in good condition. And we use that same measure, placing a tape on the aluminum strip. The aluminum strip is placed around the mold and is held with masking tape. We place 2 X-ray strips on the aluminum bottom. This is done to ensure that after finish building the voice coil, we can disengage it from the mold. Now, we hold the copper wire with the top of the masking tape and we pull it down. Now we must prepare epoxy resin. Equal parts are used, both resin as hardener. And we stir for a necessary time until we get an even mixture. To the mixture are add a few drops of epoxy solvent, if not, use toluene. And we mix it again. This is done so the mixture becomes softer and liquid, allowing a better distribution. We apply epoxy resin all over the aluminum at the part where it will be roll up the wire. It must be well spread, without excess or lumps. Now, let's proceed to wind the copper wire. The first turnaround must finish exactly at the point where the wire begins, therefore the wire is completely straight. We stir up the machine and roll up the wire turns, without leaving spaces between turns and verifying that every turn isn't mounting on another turn. It should be a perfect winding. After finishing roll up the first winding wire layer, we apply epoxy resin all over the copper winding. This is to ensure that the wire is firmly stuck. We must be careful not to smear the mold with resin, because it could be glued to the aluminum, making hard the extraction of the voice coil after we're done. To make the second copper winding layer going back, it must be rolled over with care, the first turn wire over the first winding layer, and then we wind the second layer wire. The tension used, it must be less than that we use in the first layer wire. Therefore, the wire is not going to embed between the bottom wire layer. After the second layer wire, we apply epoxy resin again, with the same care as in the previous times. To make the third layer of wire, it must be mounted with care, the first run over the previous layer. And wind the third layer wire. After finishing winding the third wires layer, we apply again epoxy resin with the same care as in the previous times. And this time we use Lex mixture. And to roll the fourth layer winding wire, we mount carefully the first turn on the previous layer, in the same way we did with the previous layers. And then roll up the fourth and final wires layer. We hold the tail end of the wire with the masking tape, and we cut the wire leaving a proven amount of the same length as the beginning wire. We proceed to remove the varnish of the wire ends. For this we use a lighter and then sand with fine grit sandpaper. We measure the voice coil with a multimeter on the scale of 200 ohms, and we check that we have the correct impedance. Because the epoxy resin is slow drying, up to 24 hours, we can accelerate the process using a heat gun. In addition, the high temperature helps to seal the resin for more strength. As the wire is heated, the resin boils, so go removing bubbles and excess of resin with the help of a clean seal cloth. Remember that any particle which remains on the winding can interfere with the coil movement in the moment of the mounting of the speaker. We let the voice coil cool naturally and proceed to remove the masking tape. We place the wires in their correct position, so that the polarity of the coil is standard established. The beginning wire is the positive, and the wire end is the negative one. Get ready a piece of paper craft or press pan paper, the same width of the color, the length of a turn and a quarter around the voice coil. We mark. We cut the paper strip to fit the measure. And we apply the yellow adhesive contact. It should be a layer of glue, thin and evenly. We place a third X-ray strip below the joint of the aluminum. This is done to avoid that the mold gets some glue. We bend the wires backward and apply the yellow adhesive contact across the surface of the voice coil's color. We spread it well using our finger. And let it dry for a while. After the glue has dried, we proceed to stick the protective paper around the collar of the voice coil, having in mind to start pasting it under the wires. After the turnaround, we apply a bit of adhesive contact. We put the wires over the paper we let it dry. And we then stick the paper over the wires, making sure that they are isolated from aluminum and from the outside. The paper is pressed with the help of the handle of the scalpel, covered with a cloth. In that way, we assure a strong and uniform adherence. Now, proceed to remove the X-ray strips. Sometimes, it is necessary to use tweezers to pull the X-ray strips without damaging the voice coil. With a piece of X-ray strip, we verify that the edge of the coil hasn't been stuck to the mold. Loosen and remove the voice coil mold. Then, with the cloth moistened with toluene, clean the excess of glue that may remain. This is very important to prevent any particles can interfere with the work of the voice coil, besides giving it a good look. With the voice coil in the mold, we pull the terminal a couple of millimeters. And with scissors, we match the voice coil's color. This is done just by looks. Also, we match the terminals or voice coil wire. We again apply heat to remove the dielectric varnish. And we sand again the voice coil ends to ensure that they don't have any dielectric varnish areas. So we will have a very good adherence of the weld. Now we apply solder paste on the voice coil wires and we weld them. In this way, we have a good electrical conduction, and the coil is ready for its installation. Now we are done with our 4-layer voice coil, very similar to the original voice coil. We measure it in its matching speaker. It must go down gently because of gravity. Remember that the wire of the right side is the beginning voice coil wire and therefore the positive pole. This is very important when testing the voice coil. To test the coil, weld a pair of wire at its terminals, having in mind the polarity. The negative pole goes to the left side or end of the winding, and the positive pole goes to the right side or beginning winding. Place the coil in the speaker magnetic gap, and with a 1.5 volt battery, verify that the polarity is correct. The coil must jump from the magnetic gap. By reversing the polarity of the battery, you can see that the coil doesn't jump. When the voice coil jump, will be in the correct phase. This is another contribution we make for you to start your own microfactory windings. Success! Watch our suggested videos. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to the toll button and check the box Send Me Updates. Join us on Facebook. And follow us on Twitter. Visit our website construyasuvideorocola.com.